You don't get to where I am by being nice to the help. That's what Morgan Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Dynamics, told his driver 10 minutes before he walked into the most important meeting of his life. He thought he was untouchable. He thought the girl pouring his water was just a stupid nobody. He was wrong. Dead wrong. In the next hour, a single insult would cost him $3.5 billion and humiliate him in front of the entire world. This isn't just a story about business. It's a lesson in karma. And it starts right now. The rain in Seattle wasn't just rain. It was a relentless, grey curtain that seemed to mute the entire city. But inside Le Ciel, the city's most exclusive rooftop restaurant, the weather was irrelevant. Here, the air smelled of truffle oil, aged mahogany, and old money. Seraphil Jenkins adjusted her apron for the 10th time, her fingers trembling slightly. She checked her reflection in the polished brass of the waiter's station. Dark circles. There was no hiding them. She'd been up since 4 a.m. studying for her bar exams, then rushed to drop her 6-year-old daughter, Lily, at her mother's apartment before clocking in for the lunch shift. Table 4 needs a top-up, Seraphil. Snap to it. The floor manager, Pierre, hissed as he glided past. Pierre was a man who believed kindness was a sign of inefficiency. On it, Pierre, Seraphil whispered. She grabbed a crystal pitcher of iced water. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She knew she shouldn't check it, but her heart hammered against her ribs. It was the 1st of the month. Rent. She slipped the phone out partially, shielding it with the pitcher. A text from her landlord. Payment declined. You have 24 hours, Seraphil, or I change the locks. A cold knot tightened in her stomach. She needed this shift. She needed the tips. Specifically, she needed the tips from the VIP reservation at Table 1, the power table in the corner, with the view of the Space Needle. The reservation was under the name Sterling. Everyone knew who he was. Morgan Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Dynamics. The man was a shark in a bespoke suit, currently finalizing a merger with Oasis Ventures that would make him the richest tech mogul in the Pacific Northwest. If Seraphil could just provide flawless service, maybe, just maybe, he'd drop a tip large enough to keep a roof over Lily's head. Focus, Seraphil, she muttered to herself. Smile. Pour. Disappear. She walked out onto the floor, the plush carpet swallowing the sound of her worn-out shoes. The restaurant was filling up with the usual crowd, politicians, heirs, and tech giants. But Table 1 was still empty. In the far corner, near the kitchen doors, sat an elderly man at a small two-top. He looked out of place. He wore a slightly frayed tweed jacket and reading glasses that were taped at the hinge. He was nursing a single cup of Earl Grey tea and reading a paperback novel. Seraphil paused at his table. More hot water, sir. The old man looked up, his eyes crinkling with a warmth that was rare in Le Ciel. Oh, no thank you, my dear. I'm just waiting for a friend. But... He paused, looking at her closely. You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on that tray. Seraphil forced a smile. It was her customer service smile, but it faltered slightly under his genuine gaze. Just a long week, sir. But I'm happy to be here. You're studying law, aren't you? He asked, pointing a gnarled finger at the flashcards poking out of her apron pocket. Seraphil flushed, quickly tucking them deeper. Yes. How did you know? I recognize the look of desperation and caffeine overdose. He chuckled softly. Criminal or corporate? Corporate, Seraphil said, her voice dropping. I want to stop guys who tear companies apart for scraps. The old man's smile faded into something thoughtful. A noble goal. Hard to do in a world like this. He gestured around the opulent room. Keep your head up, Seraphil. The view is better from there." "Thank you," she said, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over her. It was the first kind interaction she'd had all day. "Seraphiel, table 1!" Pierre's voice cut through the air like a whip. She flinched. "Excuse me," she whispered to the old man, rushing toward the front of the house. The elevator doors pinged open. The air in the room seemed to shift, becoming heavier, sharper. Morgan Sterling walked out. He didn't just walk, he marched, flanked by 2 assistants who were frantically typing on tablets. He was handsome in a cruel, sharp-edged way, wearing a navy Tom Ford suit that cost more than Seraphiel's tuition. He had a Bluetooth earpiece in, and he was shouting, "I don't care what the SEC says, Michael. Bury the report until Monday. If the stock dips before I sign with Oasis, I will gut you. Do you hear me? I will gut you professionally and personally." He ripped the earpiece out and tossed it to one of his assistants without looking. He scanned the restaurant, his eyes landing on table 1. He didn't wait to be seated. He strode past the host stand, ignoring the welcoming greeting, and sat down. Seraphiel took a deep breath. Showtime. She approached the table, pitcher in hand. "Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling. Welcome to Le Ciel. My name is Seraphiel, and I'll be taking care of you. Sparkling. Ice on the side. Lemon, not lime. And if you have that cheap tap water in there, pour it in a plant." Morgan didn't even look at her. He was busy adjusting his cufflinks. "Of course, sir." "Right away," Seraphiel said, keeping her tone even. "And where is Ella Vance?" Morgan snapped, looking at his Rolex. "She's 2 minutes late. If Oasis Ventures wants my 3.5 billion, she better learn to tell time." "I believe the rest of your party hasn't arrived yet, sir," Seraphiel said gently. Morgan finally looked up. His eyes were cold, dead sharks. "I didn't ask for a commentary on the guest list. I asked for water. Go." Seraphiel felt the heat rise in her cheeks. She turned on her heel and hurried to the service station. Her hands were shaking harder now. He's a nightmare, she thought. Just get through the hour. Get the tip. Pay the rent. She returned with the sparkling water, a bucket of ice, and a plate of sliced lemons. As she reached the table, Morgan was in the middle of a heated argument with one of his assistants. He threw his hand out in a gesture of dismissal, just as Seraphiel was leaning in to place the glass. His hand struck her forearm. The bottle of San Pellegrino slipped. Time seemed to slow down. Seraphiel lunged for it, but she was too slow. The heavy green glass bottle hit the edge of the table, shattering. Cold, fizzy water exploded outward, soaking the tablecloth and splashing onto the sleeve of Morgan Sterling's pristine navy suit. The restaurant went silent. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of water falling from the tablecloth onto the carpet. Seraphiel's heart stopped. She stared at the dark patch of water spreading on the expensive wool of his suit arm. "Oh my God," she gasped, grabbing a linen napkin. "Sir, I am so sorry. Let me help you." Morgan stood up slowly. The motion was like a predator uncoiling. He looked at his sleeve, then at Seraphiel. His face turned a shade of red that clashed violently with the serene decor. "Don't touch me," he said. His voice wasn't a shout. It was a low, guttural growl that was terrifyingly audible in the silent room. "Sir, it was an accident. I was reaching and you moved your hand." "I moved my hand?" Morgan laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "You clumsy, incompetent little—" He trailed off, stepping closer to her. Seraphiel shrank back, clutching the wet napkin like a shield. "Do you know how much this suit costs?" Morgan demanded, his voice rising now. "This is a custom weave from Milan. It costs more than your entire life's earnings, and you just ruined it with water. I'll pay for the dry cleaning, sir. Please." Seraphiel pleaded, tears stinging her eyes. She could see Pierre, the manager, sprinting across the dining room, his face pale. Dry cleaning? Morgan scoffed. He turned to the room, arms spread wide, inviting the other diners to join in his outrage. She thinks dry cleaning fixes this. This is the incompetence that is ruining this country. We give jobs to people who can't even hold a bottle, and we expect excellence. He turned back to Seraphiel, his eyes narrowing. You're stupid. That's what it is. You're just stupid. A waitress. A nothing. You exist to carry things from point A to point B, and you failed. You failed at the simplest task a human being can perform. Mr. Sterling, please. Pierre arrived, breathless. I apologize profusely. This is unacceptable. Seraphiel, get to the back. Now. No. Morgan held up a hand, stopping Pierre. I want her to clean it up. Pierre blinked. Sir? I want her to get on her knees. Morgan pointed to the floor where glass shards and water pooled. And clean up this mess while I watch. Maybe if she gets down on the floor where she belongs, she'll learn some respect for her betters. Seraphiel felt a tear spill over. The humiliation was physical, a burning sensation in her chest. She looked around. The other diners were looking away, uncomfortable, or whispering behind their hands. No one spoke up. The wealthy, powerful elite of Seattle just watched, except for one person. In the corner, the old man in the tweed jacket had lowered his book. He took off his taped glasses and set them on the table. He was watching Morgan with an intensity that could cut glass. I can't do that, sir, Seraphiel whispered, her dignity fighting through the fear. There's glass. I need a broom. Use your hands, Morgan sneered, or I call your boss's boss, and I have this entire place shut down for health code violations. I have the mayor on speed dial. Do you want to be the reason everyone here loses their jobs? Do you want to be the reason your friends here can't feed their families? It was a low blow, a disgusting, manipulative tactic. But it worked. Seraphiel looked at Pierre, who looked terrified. She thought of Lily. She thought of the rent. If she got fired today, she was homeless. Slowly, Seraphiel lowered herself to her knees, the wet carpet soaked into her uniform. She reached for a large shard of green glass. That's it, Morgan smirked, pulling out his phone. Hold on, let me get a picture. The boys at the club will love this. The help knowing their place. He snapped a photo, the flash blinding Seraphiel for a second. That is quite enough, a voice rang out. It wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that shattered the tension instantly. It was a voice of absolute authority. Morgan spun around. Who said that? The old man in the tweed jacket was standing up. He picked up his cane and walked slowly toward table 1. He didn't look frail anymore. He looked dangerous. I said, the old man repeated, stopping 3 feet from Morgan. That is quite enough. Morgan looked the old man up and down, taking in the frayed jacket, the cheap shoes, the cane. He let out a derisive snort. And who are you? The janitor? Go sit down, Grandpa, before you break a hip. This is business. Business, the old man repeated, tasting the word like it was sour milk. Is this how you conduct business, Mr. Sterling? By bullying young women? I am teaching a lesson in accountability, Morgan spat, something she clearly never learned. Now, unless you want to buy this restaurant just to kick me out, I suggest you mind your own business. I'm waiting for Ella Vance, the CEO of Oasis Ventures, and when she gets here, I don't want her seeing trash on the floor. He gestured at Seraphiel. The old man looked down at Seraphiel. He extended a hand. Stand up, child. Seraphiel looked at Morgan, then at the old man. There was something in the old man's eyes, a steeliness that reminded her of her father. She took his hand. He pulled her up with surprising strength. "She doesn't move until I say so," Morgan roared, stepping forward aggressively. "Actually," a sharp female voice cut in from the entrance, "I think she's done enough." Everyone turned. Standing at the hostess stand was Ella Vance. She was stunning, sharp, and terrifying. She wore a white power suit and held a briefcase. She had been watching the scene for the last 2 minutes. Morgan's face instantly transformed. The snarl vanished, replaced by a charming, oily smile. He buttoned his jacket, hiding the water stain. "Ella, you're here," Morgan beamed, extending a hand. "I apologize for the scene. Just some incompetence with the staff. I was just handling it. Please, sit. I've ordered the 82 Lafitte." Ella didn't take his hand. She didn't even look at him. She walked straight past him, her heels clicking rhythmically on the floor. She walked right up to Seraphiel. "Are you all right?" Ella asked, her voice surprisingly gentle. I'm fine, Mum. I'm so sorry about the table," Seraphiel stammered. Ella nodded, then turned to the old man. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture of deep respect. "I'm sorry I'm late, Chairman," Ella said. "Traffic was a nightmare." Morgan froze. His smile twitched. "Chairman?" Morgan asked, his voice cracking slightly. He looked from Ella to the old man in the tweed jacket. "Ella, who is this? I thought we were meeting alone to sign the deal." The old man slowly turned to Morgan. He didn't smile. "Mr. Sterling," the old man said, his voice dropping to a frosty chill. "You seemed very eager to meet the money behind Oasis Ventures. You've been shouting about your $3.5 billion deal." The old man brushed a piece of lint off his frayed lapel. "I am Andrew Pendleton, founder and chairman of the board of Oasis Ventures, and I believe you just called me a janitor." The silence that followed Andrew Pendleton's introduction was heavier than the glass bottle Seraphiel had dropped. It was a suffocating, physical weight. Morgan Sterling's mouth opened, then closed. His face went through a kaleidoscope of colors, from the red of rage to a pasty, sickly white. The arrogance that had coated him like armor just seconds ago evaporated, leaving a naked, terrified realization underneath. "Andrew Pendleton?" Morgan squeaked. His voice was an octave higher than usual. "But the prospectus said you were retired, in the Hamptons, invalid." "I like to keep a low profile," Andrew said, his voice dry as dust. "It helps me see things clearly. When people think you're a senile old man reading a paperback, they show you who they really are." Andrew took a step closer to the table, leaning heavily on his cane, though Seraphiel suspected the cane was more of a prop than a necessity now. "And you, Mr. Sterling, have shown me plenty." Morgan let out a nervous, breathless laugh. He looked around the room, desperate for an ally, but finding only staring eyes. He turned back to Andrew, spreading his hands in a gesture of pleading. "Mr. Pendleton, surely you understand the stress of a deal this magnitude. I've been under immense pressure. The quarterly reports, the SEC filings. Sometimes steam needs to be let off." This, he gestured vaguely at Seraphiel, who was still standing next to Ella. "This was just a moment of weakness, a misunderstanding. I am passionate about excellence. You of all people must understand that." "Excellence?" Andrew repeated the word, tasting it. He turned to Ella. "Ella, did we not discuss the core value of Oasis Ventures just this morning?" "We did, Chairman," Ella said, her voice crisp and professional. "Rule number 1, the character of the leadership determines the longevity of the asset." "Precisely," Andrew nodded. He looked back at Morgan, his eyes hardening into flint. You see, Morgan, I didn't build a multinational conglomerate by focusing on spreadsheets. I built it by betting on people. I was going to sign over $3.5 billion to you today. I was going to trust you with the livelihoods of 40,000 employees. Andrew pointed a shaking finger at Seraphiel. If this is how you treat a young woman holding a water pitcher, how will you treat a factory manager when production is down? How will you treat a junior developer when code breaks? How will you treat my employees when I'm gone? It's just a waitress, Morgan snapped, his temper fraying at the edges of his panic. She's a nobody. You are throwing away the merger of the century over a spilled glass of water and a minimum wage worker. Andrew smiled. It was a terrifying, cold smile. No, Morgan, I'm not throwing the deal away because of the water. I'm throwing it away because you are a liability. A bully is just a coward with a bit of power. And cowards make bad CEOs. They hide mistakes. They blame others. They crash companies. Andrew reached into his inner jacket pocket. For a second, Morgan looked hopeful, perhaps expecting a pen. Instead, Andrew pulled out a folded document. It was the preliminary agreement, the term sheet. Ella, Andrew said softly. Yes, sir. Do we have a material adverse change clause in the pre-agreement? We do, Ella replied, reciting from memory. Clause 14, Section B, Oasis Ventures reserves the right to withdraw from negotiations if new information comes to light regarding the governance, stability, or reputation of the partner entity. Andrew held up the paper. I consider a CEO screaming at a young law student to clean up glass with her bare hands to be a significant reputational risk. Don't you? Rayup. The sound of the paper tearing was louder than a gunshot in the quiet room. Andrew tore the document in half, then in quarters. He let the pieces flutter down onto the wet table, right next to the lemon slices Morgan had demanded. The deal is dead, Mr. Sterling. Oasis Ventures formally withdraws. You will hear from our legal team regarding the breach of our exclusivity period, seeing as you were shouting confidential figures in a public dining room. Morgan stared at the torn paper. His hand started to shake. $3.5 billion. The merger that would have made him the king of Seattle. Gone. In 3 minutes. He looked up, and the shark was back. But this time, it was a cornered, desperate shark. You can't do this, Morgan whispered. My stock. The announcement was scheduled for 4:00 p.m. The market has already priced it in. If you walk away, Sterling Dynamics tanks. I'll lose everything. You should have thought of that, Andrew said, turning his back, before you called her stupid. Most men would have left. Most men would have taken the loss, retreated to their penthouse, and called a crisis PR firm. But Morgan Sterling was a narcissist, and narcissists do not accept reality when it doesn't suit them. Pierre! Morgan roared, spinning toward the manager. Pierre jumped. Yes, Mr. Sterling. Call the police, Morgan demanded, pointing a trembling finger at Seraphiel. The police? Pierre stammered. Assault, Morgan shouted. She threw the water on me. You all saw it. It was a premeditated attack on a corporate figure. She assaulted me, and now this senile old fool is breaching a contract based on a lie. He whipped out his phone. Actually, forget the police. I'm calling the mayor. I donated $50 grand to his re-election fund last month. I'll have this place condemned. I'll have your liquor license revoked by dinner time. And you... He glared at Seraphiel. I'll see to it you never work in this city again. Not as a waitress, and certainly not as a lawyer. Seraphiel felt a cold wave of fear. She knew men like this. They had money, and money could buy a version of the truth. If he sued her, even if she won, the legal fees would bury her. She'd never pass the character and fitness portion of the bar exam with an assault charge pending. She looked at Andrew, The old man looked weary. He could walk away, but Morgan would still destroy her just for spite. Seraphiel took a deep breath. She thought about her textbooks. She thought about the endless nights studying torts and contracts. She wasn't just a waitress. She was a fighter. "Mr. Sterling," Seraphiel said. Her voice was shaking, but it was audible. Morgan sneered at her. "Shut up, you speak when spoke to." "Actually," Seraphiel said, stepping forward, "under Washington state law, recording a private conversation without consent is a gross misdemeanor if there is a reasonable expectation of privacy. However," she pointed to the ceiling, "you are in a public place, shouting." She turned to the table next to them, table 2. A young couple had been sitting there, frozen in shock. The man was holding his phone up. The red recording light was blinking. Seraphiel continued, her voice gaining strength. "And since you just publicly accused me of a crime I didn't commit, while threatening to use political influence to destroy a business, that's defamation per se, and extortion." Morgan froze. He looked at the young couple. "Turn that off," he barked. "I'm live streaming," the young man at table 2 said, his eyes wide. "Wait, you're Morgan Sterling. Dude, there are 12,000 people watching this right now. The chat is going crazy." The color drained from Morgan's face so fast it looked like he was fainting. "What?" Morgan whispered. "Twitch." "TV," the guy shrugged. "I was streaming my anniversary lunch. You walked into the frame. Everyone heard you call her stupid. Everyone heard you tell her to get on her knees. Everyone heard the old guy tear up the contract." Morgan lunged for the phone. "Give me that." "Security," Andrew's voice boomed. 2 large men in dark suits, who had been waiting discreetly by the elevator, Andrew's personal detail, stepped forward instantly, blocking Morgan from the young streamer. "Mr. Sterling," Seraphiel said, stepping closer, "if you touch him, that is battery. On camera. Before 12,000 witnesses." She looked him dead in the eye. "You mentioned you know the mayor? I'm sure he's watching too. Do you think he'll want to be associated with a man who abuses service staff and threatens voters on a live stream?" Morgan looked at his phone. It was lighting up. Notifications were pouring in. Twitter, LinkedIn, CNBC alerts. Breaking. Sterling Dynamics merger in peril after CEO meltdown at Le Ciel. Trending, Yadishash Sterling meltdown, Yadishash team Seraphiel. His hands shook so hard he dropped the phone. It landed on the wet carpet, right next to the broken glass. "You," Morgan wheezed, looking at Seraphiel. "You ruined me." "No, sir," Seraphiel said, holding her head high. "You did this all by yourself. I just poured the water." The lobby of the Sterling Dynamics headquarters, 3 miles away, was usually a quiet cathedral of commerce. But at that exact moment, it was chaos. While the drama at Le Ciel was unfolding, the stock market was reacting in real time. Algorithms, scraping social media data, picked up the sentiment shift instantly. Ticker, SDYN, Sterling Dynamics, 12 p.m., 145.50, 12.15 p.m., 142.00, and 12.20 p.m. The live stream goes viral. 110. Back at the restaurant, the atmosphere had shifted from tension to a strange, suspended reality. The restaurant manager, Pierre, realized the tide had turned. He wasn't afraid of Morgan anymore. He was looking at a sinking ship. "Mr. Sterling," Pierre said, his voice cold and professional. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You are disturbing our guests." "You're kicking me out?" Morgan sputtered. "I could buy this building." "Not anymore, you can't." A new voice entered the fray. The elevator doors opened again. This time, it wasn't a businessman. It was a woman in a sharp grey blazer, followed by 2 uniformed police officers. "Morgan Sterling?" the woman asked. "Who are you?" Morgan demanded. though the fight was leaving him. He looked like a deflated balloon. Detective Miller, Seattle PD. We received a distress call regarding a disturbance and potential assault, she said calmly. And, frankly, my partner is watching the live stream in the car. We need you to step outside, sir. This is a conspiracy, Morgan screamed as the officers guided him toward the elevator. I'm a billionaire. I am Morgan Sterling. As the doors closed, cutting off his shouts, the restaurant remained silent for 1 second longer. Then the applause started. It began with the young couple at table 2, then the businessmen at table 5, then the kitchen staff peering through the swinging doors. Even Pierre clapped. Seraphiel stood in the middle of it, overwhelmed. The adrenaline was fading, and her knees felt weak. She slumped slightly, grabbing the edge of the table for support. A warm hand touched her shoulder. Easy now, Andrew Pendleton said softly. Breathe. Seraphiel looked up at him, tears finally spilling over. I'm so sorry, Mr. Pendleton. I ruined your lunch. I ruined your meeting. Seraphiel. Andrew smiled, his eyes twinkling. You just saved me $3.5 billion. I'd say that's the most profitable lunch I've ever had. He gestured to the empty seat where Morgan had sat. Sit down, my dear. Oh, I can't. I'm on the clock. Pierre will... Pierre, Andrew called out without looking away from Seraphiel. Bring us a fresh tablecloth and a bottle of your best champagne. Seraphiel is off the clock. Pierre bowed low. Instantly, Monsieur Pendleton. Seraphiel sat, feeling like she was in a dream. Ella Vance sat across from her, closing her briefcase with a satisfying click. That was impressive legal maneuvering, Ella said, studying Seraphiel. You cited the two-party consent law correctly, though you bluffed slightly on the defamation per se. It's harder to prove with public figures, but you scared him enough to work. Where do you study? University of Washington, Seraphiel said, wiping her eyes with a fresh napkin. Night classes. I have 1 semester left. And your tuition? Andrew asked. I overheard you telling the manager about financial difficulties. Seraphiel looked down. It's been a hard year. My mum watches my daughter, but the rent in the city and the tuition hikes. She trailed off. The shame of poverty was hard to shake, even in victory. Andrew looked at Ella. They exchanged a silent look, a communication born of years of partnership. Ella, Andrew said, how much was the breakup fee for the Sterling deal? Standard 3%, Ella replied instantly. Since he breached the conduct clause, we don't owe him a dime, but we had $100 million allocated for transitional costs that is now sitting in the escrow account doing nothing. Andrew turned back to Seraphiel. He folded his hands on the table. Seraphiel, I have a proposition for you. A proposition? Seraphiel asked. Sterling Dynamics is going to crash hard, Andrew explained. By tomorrow morning, the board of directors will fire Morgan. The stock will be in the gutter. It will be a distressed asset. He leaned in, his voice low and conspiratorial. I still want to buy the company. The technology is good. It just had bad leadership. But when I buy it next week, I'm going to buy it for pennies on the dollar, which means I'm going to need a new legal team to handle the restructuring, a team that understands that ethics aren't just a suggestion. He slid a business card across the table. It was heavy, cream-colored cardstock. I don't hire stupid people, Andrew said, winking. But I do hire fighters. How would you like to finish your law degree as a paid intern for Oasis Ventures? Full tuition reimbursement included. Seraphiel stared at the card. It wasn't just a job offer. It was a lifeline. It was safety for Lily. It was a future. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say yes, Ella said, smiling for the first time. "And order the lobster. It's on the company." Seraphiel looked at the card, then at the view of the Space Needle. The rain had stopped. The sun was breaking through the grey clouds, casting a golden light over the city. "Yes," Seraphiel said. "Yes." But just as the champagne arrived, Seraphiel's phone buzzed again. It wasn't her landlord. It was a text from an unknown number. "You think you won? You have no idea who you just messed with." "Watch your back." Seraphiel looked up, the joy freezing in her chest. Morgan Sterling was down, but he wasn't out, and a billionaire with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous animal in the jungle. The euphoria of the afternoon wore off the moment Seraphiel stepped off the bus in her neighborhood. The rain had returned, turning the cracked sidewalks of her street into puddles of oil and grit. It was a stark contrast to the marble and velvet of Le Ciel. But this was home. She picked up Lily from her mother's apartment. Her mother, a woman worn down by years of double shifts, looked at Seraphiel's beaming face with suspicion. "You look too happy," her mother said, handing Lily her backpack. "Did you get fired?" "Better," Seraphiel laughed, hugging her daughter tight. "I got a future." She didn't explain everything yet. She just wanted to celebrate. On the walk home, she bought a large pepperoni pizza and a bottle of sparkling apple juice, a luxury they rarely afforded. Inside their small one-bedroom apartment, Seraphiel locked the door. For the first time in years, the lock didn't feel like it was keeping the wolves out. It felt like it was protecting a sanctuary. "Mummy, why are we eating the fancy juice?" Lily asked, her eyes wide, as Seraphiel poured the fizzy drink into plastic cups. "Because," Seraphiel said, brushing a stray curl from Lily's forehead, "the bad days are over, baby. Mummy met a real-life wizard today." "Like Harry Potter?" "Better. He wears a tweed jacket." They were laughing, mouths full of pizza, when the pounding started. Boom, boom, boom! It wasn't a polite knock. It was the sound of authority. Seraphiel froze. The text message flashed in her mind. "Watch your back." "Seraphiel Jenkins, police! Open up!" Lily dropped her pizza slice. "Mummy?" Seraphiel's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She stood up, her legs trembling. "It's okay, sweetie. Stay here." She opened the door. 3 officers stood in the hallway, 2 uniformed, and 1 plainclothes detective. Not Detective Miller from the restaurant, but a man with a hard, unyielding face. "Seraphiel Jenkins?" the detective asked. "Yes." "You are under arrest for grand larceny in the 1st degree." The world tilted on its axis. "What?" "No, you have the wrong person. I was at work, "We know where you were," the detective said, stepping into the apartment. He pulled a folded warrant from his pocket. "Mr. Morgan Sterling has filed a sworn affidavit. He claims that during the altercation at Le Ciel today, you used the distraction of the spilled water to remove a Patek Philippe Nautilus watch, valued at $125,000, from his wrist." "That's a lie!" Seraphiel screamed, backing away. "He was wearing it when he left. The live stream. Check the live stream." "We did," the detective said impassively. "The video shows you making physical contact with his arm. It shows a chaotic struggle. And then it shows Mr. Sterling leaving. He claims he didn't notice the watch was missing until he was in the squad car. We found the clasp damaged in the back seat. He planted it. Don't you see? He's trying to frame me." "Turn around, Miss Jenkins," the officer said, pulling out handcuffs. "Please, my daughter is right there," Seraphiel begged, tears streaming down her face. "Don't do this in front of her. Please." Lily began to wail, a high-pitched sound of pure terror. "Mommy! Mommy!" "Mom, grab the kid," the detective barked at the female officer. "Call Child Protective Services. We can't leave a minor alone in a crime scene." "No!" Seraphiel lunged forward, but the male officer grabbed her, spinning her around and slamming her against the wall. The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into her wrists. "You have the right to remain silent," the detective droned on, his voice a dull roar in Seraphiel's ears. She watched helplessly as the female officer tried to comfort a screaming Lily. "Call Andrew Pendleton," Seraphiel shouted as they dragged her out into the hallway, her neighbors peeking out from behind their chains. "Call Oasis Ventures, please." "Save it for the lawyer, lady," the detective said, pushing her toward the stairs. As she was shoved into the back of the patrol car, Seraphiel looked through the rain-streaked window. She saw a black sedan parked down the street. The window rolled down just an inch. Even from this distance, she recognized the silhouette. Morgan Sterling was watching, and he was smiling. The holding cell at the precinct smelled of bleach and old sweat. Seraphiel sat on the metal bench, her knees pulled to her chest. They had taken her shoelaces. They had taken her phone. They had taken her dignity. It had been 4 hours. Her mind was racing. Grand larceny, 1st degree. In Washington state, that was a Class B felony. Up to 10 years in prison. Even if she was acquitted, the arrest record alone would bar her from the bar exam. The dream was dead. The job at Oasis was dead. And Lily, oh God, Lily! She was in the system now, a foster home, a strange bed. Seraphiel buried her face in her hands and wept until she had no tears left. "Jenkins, lawyer," the guard grunted, unlocking the cell door. Seraphiel looked up, hope flaring in her chest. Had Andrew come? She was led into a small interrogation room with a two-way mirror. But it wasn't Andrew Pendleton sitting there. It was a man she didn't recognize. He was slick, wearing a suit that was too shiny, and he had a briefcase that looked like it was made of alligator skin. "Who are you?" Seraphiel asked, sitting down warily. "Where is Mr. Pendleton?" "Mr. Pendleton is a busy man," the lawyer said smoothly. "My name is Stephen Thorne. I've been sent by Mr. Sterling." Seraphiel stood up instantly. "I want you out. Get out!" "Sit down, Seraphiel," Stefan said, opening his briefcase. "I'm here to offer you a deal, a lifeline." "A deal? Mr. Sterling is a forgiving man," Stefan lied. "He understands that people in your financial bracket make mistakes. He's willing to drop the charges." Seraphiel paused. "He is?" "On one condition." Stefan slid a document across the table. "You sign this. It's a confession. You admit to the theft. You apologize publicly for the emotional distress you caused him. And you admit that the water spill was a premeditated act of assault paid for by, let's say, a corporate rival." "You want me to lie," Seraphiel whispered. "You want me to say I was a corporate saboteur so he can void the contract breach with Oasis." "Smart girl," Stefan smirked. "You sign this, you plead to a misdemeanor. No jail time. Mr. Sterling will even give you $50,000 to start over somewhere else, somewhere far away from Seattle." "And if I don't?" "Then we proceed to trial." Stefan leaned in, his eyes cold. "We have the watch. We have the motive. Your debts. We have the video of you touching him. We will bury you. You'll go to prison for 5 years, Seraphiel. And Lily? She'll be 18 by the time you get out. She won't even know who you are." It was a perfect trap. Sign her life away and save her freedom, or fight and risk losing her daughter forever. Seraphiel looked at the pen. Her hand trembled. She thought of Lily crying in the foster home. $50,000 could get them to Arizona or Texas. They could hide. She reached for the pen. The door to the interrogation room flew open with a bang that shook the walls. "Get away from my client!" a voice thundered. Stefan jumped. Seraphiel spun around. Standing in the doorway was not Andrew Pendleton, it was Ella Vance, and she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a man who looked like he chewed rocks for breakfast, the finest criminal defense attorney in the state, Davies the Shark Ross. "Client?" Stefan stammered. She hasn't retained counsel." "She has now," Ella said, stepping into the room. She looked at Seraphiel. "Don't sign a thing." "Ella," Seraphiel gasped. "They took Lily. They said I stole his watch." "We know," Ella said, her voice dropping to a soothing tone. "Andrew is at the CPS office right now with a judge. He's getting Lily released into his temporary custody. She's safe." Seraphiel let out a sob of relief, so violent her knees buckled. Ella caught her, guiding her back to the chair. Then Ella turned to Stefan Thorne. Her expression shifted from maternal to murderous. "Mr. Thorne," Ella said, "you are aware that coercing a confession without proper representation is a disbarable offense." "I was merely facilitating a settlement," Stefan said, sweating now. "Get out," Davies Ross barked, "before I have you arrested for obstruction." Stefan grabbed his briefcase and scurried out like a cockroach exposed to light. "Now," Davies Ross said, sitting down and placing a heavy file on the table. "Let's get to work. Morgan Sterling made one critical mistake." "What?" Seraphiel asked, wiping her face. "He has the watch. He has the video." "He has a video," Ella corrected. "The live stream from Twitch. It's grainy. It's chaotic. It shows you bumping into him." Ella pulled a tablet out of her bag. "But Morgan forgot where he was eating." Ella smiled grimly. "Le Ciel is owned by the Pendleton Group. We bought the building in 1998. She tapped the screen. "And Andrew Pendleton is paranoid. He had military-grade 4K security cameras installed in the ceiling fixtures 3 years ago. They record audio and video in high definition." Seraphiel leaned in, watching the screen. The footage was crystal clear. It showed the table from above. It showed Seraphiel approach. It showed the water spill. "Watch closely," Ella said, slowing the playback speed. On the screen, as Seraphiel was on her knees apologizing, Morgan was standing up, ranting to the room. His hands were moving wildly. "There," Davies Ross pointed. In frame 402, as Morgan reached into his jacket pocket to retrieve his phone to take the photo of Seraphiel, his cuff pulled up. The watch was there. Then, as he fumbled with the phone, his other hand, the one hidden from the Twitch streamer's angle, slipped the watch off his wrist and dropped it into his own jacket pocket. He unclasped it himself, Seraphiel breathed. He had it the whole time. "He didn't plant it in the car," Davies explained. "He still has it, or he hid it later. But this proves the theft never happened at the table. It proves he filed a false police report. It proves perjury." Ella stood up, smoothing her blazer. "Seraphiel, I need you to be strong for 1 more hour. We're going to get you processed and out on bail. Davies will handle the paperwork." "Where are you going?" Seraphiel asked. Ella checked her own watch. It was a simple, elegant Cartier. "Morgan is holding a press conference in 30 minutes at his headquarters. He plans to announce that he was the victim of a violent theft to try and salvage his stock price before the market opens tomorrow." Ella's eyes flashed. "Andrew and I are going to crash the party." The press briefing room at Sterling Dynamics was a masterpiece of corporate intimidation. The walls were lined with brushed steel, the carpet was a deep, authoritative blue, and the lighting was designed to make whoever stood at the podium look like a god descending from Olympus. Today, however, Morgan Sterling didn't look like a god. He looked like a martyr. He stood behind a forest of microphones, his suit jacket removed, his shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal a bandage on his forearm, a purely theatrical addition, as the water spill had caused no injury. He looked weary, his eyes cast down in practiced sorrow. Dozens of cameras flashed, the shutters sounding like a swarm of mechanical locusts. Every major news network was there. CNN, Fox Business, Bloomberg. They were all hungry for the story of the billionaire assaulted by the deranged waitress. "Ladies and gentlemen," Morgan began, his voice trembling with just the right amount of suppressed emotion. "I built this company on trust, on integrity. Today, those values were attacked, not just figuratively, but literally." He paused, taking a sip of water, careful to hold the glass with 2 hands. The individual in question, Ms. Jenkins, didn't just spill water. That was a diversion, a calculated, violent act designed to rob me of a family heirloom, a watch my grandfather gave me on his deathbed. A ripple of sympathetic murmurs went through the press corps. "But what hurts more," Morgan continued, gaining confidence, "is that Oasis Ventures has chosen to side with a criminal. Andrew Pendleton, a man I once respected, has let his senility cloud his judgment. He has breached our contract based on lies. But let me be clear, Sterling Dynamics will not be bullied. We will press charges. We will sue for damages, and we will prevail." "Mr. Sterling," a reporter from the back shouted, "is it true the waitress is a single mother?" "A single mother who chose a life of crime," Morgan shot back, his face hardening. "Poverty is not an excuse for violence. We must have law and order." He looked into the camera lens, projecting strength. "I am the victim here, and I will not rest until justice is served." "That is an interesting definition of justice, Morgan." The voice came from the back of the room. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the murmurs like a scalpel. The reporters turned, the cameras swiveled. Standing in the double doors at the back of the room was Andrew Pendleton. He was flanked by Ella Vance and 2 uniformed officers, Detective Miller and her partner. Morgan froze. His grip on the podium tightened until his knuckles turned white. "Security!" Morgan barked. "Remove these people. This is a private briefing." "Actually," Andrew said, walking slowly down the center aisle, his cane tapping rhythmically on the floor, "as of 10 minutes ago, I am a majority shareholder. I bought the dip, Morgan. I own 51% of the outstanding debt. Technically, I own the podium you're standing on." A gasp went through the room. The reporters were typing furiously on their phones. Andrew stopped in the front row. He looked up at Morgan with a mixture of pity and disgust. "You told the world a story, Morgan, but you left out the best part." Andrew nodded to Ella. Ella pulled a small remote from her pocket. She pointed it at the massive projection screen behind Morgan, the screen currently displaying the Sterling Dynamics logo. "We took the liberty of hacking into your presentation feed," Ella said calmly. "I hope you don't mind." The logo flickered and vanished. In its place, the high-definition footage from Le Ciel appeared. The room went dead silent. On the screen, the 4K video played in crisp detail. It showed Seraphiel spilling the water. It showed Morgan screaming. It showed Seraphiel on her knees. "And here," Ella narrated, her voice amplified by the room's acoustics, "is the robbery." She zoomed in. The footage slowed down. Every person in the room watched as Morgan Sterling, in 4K resolution, unclasped his own watch. They watched him slide it into his pocket. They watched him pull out his phone to take a picture of the crying waitress. He has the watch," a reporter from the front row whispered. "He stole it from himself," another said, louder. Morgan stared at the screen. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The bandage on his arm suddenly felt heavy, ridiculous. He looked like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Only the cookie jar was a billion-dollar company, and the punishment was prison. That's a deep fake," Morgan screamed, his voice cracking. "It's AI! They doctored it!" "It is time-stamped and watermarked by the security server at Le Ciel," Detective Miller said, stepping up onto the stage. She walked over to the podium. "Morgan Sterling," she said, her voice loud and clear. "Please step away from the microphone." "You can't do this." Morgan backed away, knocking over the glass of water. It shattered, a poetic echo of the lunch that started it all. "I am Morgan Sterling. I know the mayor." "The mayor just tweeted that he's returning your campaign donations," a reporter shouted from the crowd, holding up his phone. Laughter rippled through the room. It was the sound of an empire crumbling. Detective Miller pulled out her handcuffs. "You are under arrest for filing a false police report, perjury, and attempted extortion. You have the right to remain silent, and I strongly suggest you use it." Morgan looked for an escape. He looked at the side door, but another officer was already blocking it. He looked at the crowd, but they weren't his audience anymore. They were his jury. Slowly, defeated, he held out his hands. The handcuffs clicked. As they led him away, Morgan stopped in front of Andrew. He looked small. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the hollow look of a man who realizes he has lost everything. "Why?" Morgan whispered. "It was just a waitress. Why did you care?" Andrew leaned in, his voice low enough that only Morgan could hear. "Because, Morgan, the true measure of a man is not how he treats his equals. It is how he treats those who can do nothing for him. You failed the test." The police dragged him out. The camera flashes went wild, capturing the image that would be on the front page of every newspaper in the world the next morning, the billionaire in cuffs. The heavy steel door of the precinct buzzed and clicked open at 3:03 a.m. Seraphiel stepped out into the cool Seattle mist, her uniform stained, her eyes red. She expected a long, lonely bus ride. Instead, a sleek black town car sat idling at the curb. Andrew Pendleton stepped out, cradling a sleeping bundle in his arms. "Lily!" Seraphiel choked out, rushing forward. She buried her face in her daughter's neck, sobbing with relief. "She's fine," Andrew said gently, handing the child over. "We had ice cream for dinner. Don't tell her dentist." Ella Vance stepped from the car, holding a garment bag. She offered a warm, genuine smile. "We thought you might want to burn that uniform," she said. "There's a change of clothes in there, and a folder." "A folder?" Seraphiel asked, wiping her eyes. "Your employment contract," Ella explained. "It starts Monday. You'll be working in the legal department at the newly reorganized Oasis Sterling Group. Full tuition reimbursement included. Oh, and we put a deposit down on a 2-bedroom apartment 3 blocks from the office." Seraphiel looked at them, stunned. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do all this for me?" Andrew's eyes crinkled. "Because the world is full of Morgan Sterlings, Seraphiel. We need more people like you to fight them." 1 year later, the University of Washington auditorium was packed with families and flashbulbs. Seraphiel Jenkins, Juris Doctor, summa cum laude. As Seraphiel crossed the stage, a 7-year-old girl in the front row stood on her chair, screaming, "That's my mummy!" Next to her, Andrew and Ella applauded, beaming like proud grandparents. Seraphiel leaned into the microphone. "They told me I was stupid," she said, her voice ringing clear. "They told me I was a nobody. But I learned that your worth isn't decided by the person signing your paycheck. It's decided by what you're willing to fight for." Outside in the sunlight, Andrew handed her a small box. Inside was a simple, vintage watch. "It belonged to my daughter," Andrew said softly. "She was a fighter too. I think she'd want you to have it." Seraphiel clasped it around her wrist. It fit perfectly. "What time is it?" Andrew asked with a wink. Seraphil looked at the dial, the gold catching the sun. She smiled, ready for the future. It's time to get to work. And that is how a stupid waitress took down a billionaire and changed her life forever. It's a reminder that character always outshines capital, and that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one pouring the water. Morgan Sterling thought he was untouchable, but he forgot the golden rule. Be kind, because you never know who you're talking to. If this story moved you, or if you've ever had to deal with a boss who didn't respect you, hit that like button. Let's show the algorithm that good people still win. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our next story about justice served cold. What would you have done if you were in Seraphil's shoes? Would you have taken the money or fought back? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. See you in the next video.